Hello and welcome to another conversation of Soul Horse Sunday. I'm Delia with True North Equestrians, and my guest today is Elsa Janney with Wolf Winds. And I've been looking forward to this conversation because I watched some of her stuff on Instagram, and I actually subscribed to one of her courses on healing ancestral wounds with animals, around animals. And it was very interesting. And so I thought it would be a good conversation to have today. So Elsa, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm very excited to finally connect with you. I followed you for a long time, but almost more, not so through you directly, but more of like other people would share, like, the beautiful channelings you've had with their horses and things and stuff. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, someday my herd will have theirs done. Yeah, very excited to connect. So thank you so much. Yeah, as you mentioned, I am Elsa Janney, the co-creator and co-guardian of Wolf Winds, as I like to say. It definitely is not just my thing. I definitely came up with the name way back in high school when I was about 15 or 16 years old. But the vision and the essence of what Wolf Winds is and what my dogs, horses, and myself all strive to inspire, create, and embody, not only for ourselves, but for clients, is kind of a quick, easy way to put it is kind of like a relationship coach, but for self to self, self to animal, self to land, self to human, self to nature. To me, that's all very important. And as all of us, not all of us, but those of us that embark on spiritual and healing journeys, I think that our relationships with animals and land is just as, if not more important than our relationships with humans.
Right. I know that's so overlooked, especially with land.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a big believer. There's land in Colorado that calls to me. I used to live in that area, and then I decided the Sierra Nevadas would be better because I wanted mountains but less snow. And ever since I moved here, I've been trying to get back. And it's truly every time, even when I get off the plane at the Denver airport, which is not in the area of Colorado that I like, but my soul just takes a big breath. And when I go up to the Conifer area, tiny town area, I just feel so different. And it's the relationship with the land.
Yeah.
So it's really
Definitely.
interesting. And up around Golden Gate area. So I totally understand having a relationship with the land. And we're not talking about just caring for the land as caregivers, which is, of course, the right thing to do. But it's more about actually having a relationship and understanding and getting answers when you're connected with the land.
Yeah, definitely. And realizing that, it's not just this, geographical space that we occupy. It's its own living, breathing, conscious and subconscious entity, with spirits, with its own trauma that it's had to witness, with its own soul history of those other souls that have been on it throughout, time, place, and space and things. And it is just as much our, sacred guardianship to be a part of that land's history while we're here.
Right. It's so interesting how in this Northern California area, there's a place that we ride, and there's this ginormous old dead oak tree. And every time I ride by there, I just hear stories and see picnics of people that have been there for generations. And I just always want to talk to that tree and find out what that tree knows. So,
Yes.
I mean, it's true that they do carry information from experiences and people that have interacted with them over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I live in a place that is very rich historically, but also it's got a really deep mining history. And so it's got this really unique juxtaposition of this kind of like really intense human like stripping of the land, but then but it's also along the Continental Divide. And so, the big Rocky Mountains, and it just has this like also huge like breath of this like ancient, like prehistoric energy that kind of gets to walk through there. And it's really funny. A lot of times when I connect with the land, one of the first things that I get is like, don't worry about the mining. Like, you guys are such a blip in our history. Like, don't go thinking you're all that, having mined the crap out of us. And I'm like, yeah, thank you for that reality check. That is very nice. and because once I can get past that, like, that human sympathy for the land and what, my town has done to it, not my town, don't own, but what, the town I occupy and which is done to the land, they're like, yeah, but that's not like the point of why you're here. Like, you're here to help help in the healing, help in the grid systems and the portal space and stuff, and also just to bring more healing light. And if we're focusing on all that has been harmed, there's the other side of the coin that we need to take a look at.
Right. Okay, and there's one thing I don't know why I just clicked it. Something that a term that you use and I just love. I've seen it a few times, but I haven't used it to refer to my own relationship with my own animals. You guys call yourself a coven.
Yes, we
And
do.
I love that. We probably just lost some people there.
That's fine. That is okay.
Yeah, I just love that, the whole idea, because it kind of shifts, I don't want to say power, but it shifts assignments and roles when you actually refer to your animals as part of your coven.
Definitely.
So I find that really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. It's I hear, let's see, how do I want to preface this? I've heard many people say that their pets that they caretake in this lifetime are their familiars.
Right.
And I always rebuttal with, but did you ask them if that is true? Did you ask them if that's the role they wanted to take? Did you ask them if they wanted to be a witch or a wizard instead? Do they want to be a warlock? Do they want to be a centaur, or, just a full embodiment of their wild self? Or, the full embodiment of their domestic self, and they're going to help us heal our domestic wounds that we have. And so, yeah, my animals, they are all, they're part of my coven. We are all, they are just as, power, that the power dynamic that we all share together. It is not like I'm their guardian, but I mean, shit, they have just as much space and place to step in and say, hey, yeah, but this, oh no, this is the way I want, to work with this instead. Or, oh, you thought about this, but like, hey, I'm going to offer this idea. It's very similar to having a full-on human conversation when I go out and with the intention to co-create with the animals, when I bring them a question or like something that I'm pondering, or, hey guys, we're trying to accomplish this. What do you guys think? I never don't ask them the same, or ask them the same questions that I wouldn't ask myself, and give them the space to be heard and received by me that I would hope to. I golden rule it with the animals.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You said you're a guardian of your animals, and that's a term that a lot of us use. I say caretaker because sometimes I feel like I just serve them. But I did a reading with a horse, and he told me, he said, I have within my care a human. So I wonder how many animals consider, I know, it stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
Yes, I have within my care a human. So how many animals consider themselves to be our guardians?
Very much so.
So, and some of it may project off onto emotions or spiritual aspects, energy rather than physically. I've never had one of them buy me dinner, but
right.
But at the same time, how often do they consider themselves to be our guardians? Since that reading, I really kind of shifted how I look at it. I think I'm all that because I'm taking care of them, but
no.
On a second sight, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, which is another reason why using the word coven for me feels so resonant and congruent.
It does. Yeah.
We're all we all have the capacity to be equal partners, equal playing, equal players in our quote unquote game of our soul family coming together in this lifetime and saying, all right, this is our soul family, aka coven, that we've chosen to be together.
Right.
We all have places, pieces on the playing board. And sometimes, hey, like right now, currently, I'm going through some health stuff. I've had to ask them to step up, and they have definitely been my guardians and my caretakers for months now.
Right.
And I accept and receive that with such compassion and joy to get to receive from my animals that way. And not from, oh shoot, like, the guilt or the shame of I can't take care of my animals to the capacity that I know I'm capable of. Therefore, it's somehow a detriment to them. No,
right.
Because I'm offering them that sovereignty and space of, hey, guess what, guys? I'm not in my best self. I'm not asking you to be your best selves, but if you're available to support me in any way, I'm willing to receive it. And also, you guys can just go ahead and kind of be your own selves right now. We can be in a limbo if need be.
Right. I look at it as as in a coven, everybody brings their own element and their own magic to the union of everyone. And I feel like that's what my animals, and they're all so different. Things they contribute is so different. It's so independent as to who they are.
Yeah, and it just gives them a lot more like breath and exhale to really explore that. Not just be like, you're a dog, you're a horse, therefore that's your being. Like, no, like who are you? It gives them
yeah. And you were talking about something that triggered and it made me think of something that just happened last week. I went to ride, and I hadn't been riding because I had some health stuff going on between that and the weather. So it was probably her 5th ride this year. And Chant is forward, and she's powerful, and she's very free thinking and all that. And I remember that I was very anxious because I really did want to ride with someone. I like to ride alone because I like that quiet solitude. But this time of year, there's a lot of bears out.
Yeah.
And last time I rode her alone, it's been a while, but we ran into 3 bears. And I'd rather not do that, So, and when I ride with other people, the advantage is they all talk so loud that there's never a bear in sight. But I don't like all of that noise all the time. So I remember I told her, we talked about taking care of you. And I remember telling her at the beginning of the ride that I'm not at my best today. So I really need for you to step up and you be the one. And we had a pretty good ride. I mean, there was a few things we had to look at because, like I said, she hasn't been out and everything is new after the storms. She took care of me, and she did step up, and she was the one that actually had the most courage that ride. So they do absolutely step up when we ask them to. But we have to allow or believe that it's possible that they will.
Yes.
And if you're not, that's not of your mindset or your experience, then that's a process to come to believe that they are capable of stepping up and then identifying it when they actually do step up.
Yep. Yeah, actually, I just watched Raya and the Last Dragon yesterday. I needed some dragon magic in my life, and so I watched.
What did you watch?
Raya and the Last Dragon. It's a Disney movie.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It came out about a year ago, but a lot of the premise of it is trust, and that's it's a lot of times too, we don't always have the most trust in ourselves, but seeing somebody else put their faith and trust in us, again, it gives us that opportunity to go, I have, I can meet that faith and trust within myself and show them, and not even to prove anything, but just to, I can step up into a greater expanse of myself that's being flexed right now, that's being stretched. That also in a case like with you, and you said Enchantress. And I love that name. You asked that of her, and she was able to receive, and then you guys both had a congruent, like, sovereign, beautiful experience together. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was lovely, and it was really a witness as to letting them step up when we really need them to, because a lot of times we need them to, but we don't believe they're capable. We don't trust what it's going to look like. And so it's really quite a process to learn to let them lead. It really is.
And I'm actually having two things quickly are coming up. One is like that last sentence you just said of like, we might ask them to do so, but are we really going to allow them?
Right.
How often do we do that to our own self?
Yes.
And what was the other piece? Maybe that one went away. That's okay. Yeah, we'll just do that one.
Okay. So one of the things that that's been in my world recently, the last probably 9 to 10 months, is ancestral healing. And what I like about ancestral healing is epigenetics is really starting to prove so much about ancestral healing, and meaning what we carry forward from our parents and their parents and on and on. And there is quite a bit of research on that. And you have a program that you do that I actually did, ancestral healing with animals. And I did that. I took your course because my grandparents had a small farm, mostly dairy, but animals weren't abused, but they were meat animals, or they provide for you animals. I look back and go, well, that was a horrible small pen to keep that pig in. But that's just kind of how they did animals. And then I come in and I'm this, open empath, and I'm put in that situation where they kill rabbits and the pig and the chicken killing day and everything. And I just remember being traumatized. And so I took your course, and it was really interesting the things that it brought up and how it brought up memories and emotions that I didn't quite remember or didn't put into words because I wouldn't let myself, or I just didn't have access to it until I was open to healing the ancestry of that. And that has led to looking into ancestral healing with both of my parents and their lineage and all that. So, which was also brought on by a health crisis for me. It's like, how do I heal that so that I don't have this anymore? And so I would like for you to talk some about how your horses, and I know this goes to all animals, I mainly focus on horses, but if you want to drift off, you can, on how your horses have helped you heal ancestral healing. And if it was healing with them as animals or healing in your community, in your memory in other lives or whatever. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, they're all kind of descending in, like just letting them come into my space. So I come from, on my mother's side, like at this one property that's 40 minutes down the road, 5th generation cattle ranchers. And I grew up just on the outside of it. I wasn't really given permission to be a part of it growing up because allergies, money, my mom didn't like the ranch life growing up. And so therefore I didn't really get to be a part of it. But the way this all came about for me is I had just moved back home to Montana back in 2020. I'd been living up in Alaska, working with reindeer and sled dogs, which are two. So I do like to preface this, that reindeer, sled dogs, and horses, in North America at least, well, no, many in other countries, I don't need to get geographic, 3 of the main domestic animals that humans have, northern hemisphere at least. 3 main domestic animals that humans have and have a deep emotional connection and relationship with, beyond just food, cattle, sheep, goats, et cetera, et cetera. They have, there's a lot more of that trust, compassion, spiritual connection relationship with them. And so I came home after leaving the sled dogs and reindeer to work with the horses. And I kind of just had this epiphany one day, literally walking through my kitchen. And when you have those, like, someone slaps you upside the head and you almost fall over and you're like, okay, who is that? Well, Mother Nature slapped me upside the head and basically gave me just this giant download of your animal ancestral line, is what I call it. And it's the entire culmination within your ancestry of every animal human relationship your ancestors have had. And when I didn't even have any of my horses at the point when this all came to be, and so I experienced it with my dogs first. And when I did it, I didn't even at the time have a name for it or realize what I had actually done. And I was kind of just sitting there in my Akashic records. That's where I primarily do my healing. It gives me kind of direct access to my soul in that quantum realm and space. And was in my Akashic records, very quiet in the garage with all the dogs. And I finish up, and yeah, same thing, a lot of visuals, just different memories and things coming up, not just from my Elsa self, but from my ancestors, getting to feel a lot of that, but then also getting to speak with the animals. My ancestors are from Scotland, they're sheep farmers. And so I got to speak to these sheep, and they were like, yeah, you're welcome. Like, we made you who you are. We got you to be here. Like, isn't that incredible? Like, rather than feeling like, oh, like my ancestors, weren't necessarily super nice to these sheep. Maybe they were, I don't really know the full extent of it, but yeah, there's a lot that could be said about farming. But I remember just these sheep were very, very sweet. But when I finished up, and the dogs didn't say a word, just energetically finished, closed my records, and all of the dogs, all 5 of them, I've got 5 dogs, and all of us are cuddling on the ground. They turned and looked at me and jumped on me, and doggy pile, wow, running and wrestling around. And I just was like, are you kidding me? It just was such a beautiful experience to have, where no verbal words were said, just my energy shifted so much that, son of a bitch, by the time that, these dogs who have known me from anywhere from 10 years to a year and a half felt my energy shift like that and go, oh, her baseline frequency has just changed enough to where these beautiful animals who pick up on that stuff so easily said, she's changed, she's different, this is amazing. And ever since then, just there's such this breadth within our relationship that's so much easier for me to allow, all the stuff that we spoke on before, the covenant, the allowance, the trust, everything. It makes it so much easier because it just seems second nature, having healed that animal human ancestry. And then when the horses started to come in, it's funny because I don't really have a lot of experience with horses prior to not having it healed. But what my herd has shared with me is that's kind of part of my medicine with the horses, is they're like, but we don't have to bypass anything with you. You're not trying to hurdle over all of this human horse ancestry that your ancestors had that was, clogging the pipes, so to speak. And I always like to, say, this is one of those things where I want everybody in the world to do it. And yet, if you don't do it, that's fine. Some people don't start their spiritual journeys. Some people don't start ancestral journeys, but it's one of those things where doing this for me, I already had a beautiful, freshly baked apple pie sitting on the counter. And it was gorgeous and beautiful and flaky crust, golden, smelled amazing. And then all of a sudden I pulled out this fresh batch of homemade ice cream out of the freezer. And so I got to not only, and I'm using this in reference to my animal human relationships, it's this beautiful pie. The pie is fantastic on its own. It's great. And yet the richness, the suppleness, and that deeper connection is available through the adding in the ice cream, which is through adding in that ancestral healing. And it also then creates a space where I'm not only eating that pie on my own, I'm inviting all my ancestors to share that pie with me and saying, oh my gosh, even my uncle and my grandpa, who I did get to watch train some horses growing up. I watched my cousins train horses. I did have, some experience with them and stuff, just not to the extent that I wanted. And both my uncle and my grandpa have since passed, and they're with me a lot of the time when I'm out with the horses. And it's so beautiful because I get to share with them, hey, look at look at this new way of doing it. And they are so curious and so open to it. And it's really beautiful because, maybe they wouldn't have been that way in the physical space. They probably would have looked at me like I had 6 heads, which that's fine. I'm used to a lot of my family looking at me that way. But just having that connection to my ancestors, that's not, oh, I have to, bypass a lot of the epigenetic trauma that is a part, or that was, a part of my genetics, whether I was aware of it or not. Now I just get to be my curious and fullest and ever evolving self with these beautiful animals that also don't have to bypass any of my frequencies to get to me with what their most curious and fullest and ever evolving self is either. Does that make sense?
Sort of. So maybe you could break it down by storytelling, meaning that how does this show up in your relationship with your horses?
Yes. Again, I will say it's kind of hard because I don't know what it was like prior.
Oh, okay.
But what I will say is the horses that have found me to be their guardian have found me so easily, so quickly. The stories of them finding me are quite profound, quite soul led. Just the rapidness of it all happening feels to me very, in alignment and congruency, because I didn't have a lot of that ancestry to get through. A pony coming to me. Edith was the first one that came and found me, and she, dropped it. I'm also an animal communicator. And so I do very easily have animals kind of drop into my awareness and space to share things with me, and especially ones that are very connected. She dropped in, hey, I was your grandma in a past life. We're also soul family. I'm coming. All right, cool. Ariel, my mare, hey, I almost drove off the interstate because she was in a feedlot shouting at me. Got her super quickly. Same with my Mustang Dakota. I just couldn't ignore this picture I saw of him on Facebook. But then, let's see. There's it's okay. This is why I'm struggling. I'm like, why am I struggling to share this? There's so much to share. The horses actually would like to come in and speak on my behalf. If that is all right, if that's all right with you. My mare Ariel is here, and I might end up crying, heads up. So Ariel is walking up, and she's this beautiful quarter horse mare, and she says, I was literally born into Elsa's ancestry, and they didn't want me because I was small, because of my physicality and what I had to offer as just a horse. Elsa heard me screaming, crying, and praying that she would find me, and she did. She had no qualms with my physicality. She didn't care that I didn't want to be a roping horse. She stepped up to me and asked, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? I have never been asked that before. At 6 years of age, I was only told what I would do, could, should be. And when I didn't fit into those parameters, I was told I would amount to nothing and was discarded. To have someone approach me and the very first thing they say to me is, who are you? What do you want to be? Most people, spiritual or not, would not ask that question right off the bat. They might ask, what do you have to offer me? What do you as this horse have in connection with me? Elsa asked nothing of herself. She only asked how she could serve me. And I know Ariel, know that is in a direct accomplice to her having healed her animal human ancestry.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that opens up a different portal to walk through.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Ariel.
Yes, because what happened is, because that healing was there, you didn't come to her as the human who had demands for her.
Yeah.
You actually, okay, interesting. Usually when I was younger, of course, when I had my first two horses, with my first horse, the big deal was you're the leader in the relationship. That was, long 30 years ago. And so I went on that model, and sometimes it works. When I was in the saddle, did not work. And then the second mare, I started with that Mystic Maya mare that I have now, that's 25 or 26. And then it's morphed over time to becoming equals. And now it's kind of in a thing where we just co-create, and it kind of comes and goes as to who's the one that's taking, I don't want to say leadership, but who is more
who's guiding
present and in the partnership. Yeah. And interesting, because I never thought of it as having to do with ancestral healing. But okay, so you did some active work on this, and what just came to me was, how often do people do this ancestral healing in reverse, meaning that we have horses that we begin to soften with and become more aware of their influence in our life, and as a result, that goes back and does ancestral healing. I mean, I'm just, as it comes, I'm just saying this as a question. I'm trying to formulate it in my mind. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, to a point. It's kind of like, let's see. I'm usually a mismetaphor. Always, because what you're doing is, anytime you are changing the experience, you're allowing for something new to take place and to transpire. Anytime you are stepping into a space of known awareness, you're stepping into the space with the horses that you've been with for years and going, oh, I'm not going to step into this space the same way I always have. You're creating new neural pathways in your brain by stepping into that space. However, the epigenetics might not be getting as much, fuel pumped to them, if that makes sense. More neural pathways are creating space by softening with the horses, being more co-creative, allowing that guidance to shift and things and whatnot, creating that different dynamic between the horses. But then the epigenetics, I always like to sit, I like to sit there with my epigenetics in my hand and just go, how can I give you the most loving care and healing that I possibly can? my sister had had her first baby this summer, and having already done a lot of ancestral healing, I like had this moment of profound just like awe of like, oh my gosh, like this beautiful baby isn't gonna have to fathom, pontificate, ponder, like express, or even hardly be curious about half the shit that I've ever had to be curious and wonder and go and heal, because I've already done it. You know, like literally getting to see those future generations, you know, reap
Have
and
less
sow
struggle. Mhm.
yep, reap the rewards of all the ancestral healing that I've done. Um, and not to say that, you know, it's without it, it would be, you know, any worse for her or any different for her. It's just because it is what it is. I think that it's so beautiful to really witness and be a part of.
Yeah, interesting. And at the same time, when you're just hearing you talk, I believe that my mare enchantress is the one who invited me to go into the ancestral healing, because it's since I've had her that I've become aware of all these things, and that I've actually, like I said, walked through that portal. So people, pay attention. If your horse is asking you to approach the whole relationship different, your training different, your education different, notice these things and see where it's leading you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Enchantress was just like, and remember, especially when we're doing animal and human ancestral healing, like, so you did the course, you healed a lot of your animal human ancestry. Mm-hmm. Well, like Bob's your uncle, every animal and their ancestry also got to heal just by you going through your epigenetic awareness of those animal human relationships, because animals, especially, or you know, domesticated animals, have their own epigenetic awareness of an animal human relationship as well. And any time that you've gone through and done some animal human ancestral healing, those animals that were a part of that relationship also get to heal. It creates such a massive ripple effect that is just absolutely like unfathomable to me, and it makes like, it fills me with just so much hope for our future animal human, our present and future animal human relationships. I mean, all of us are so aware that how loud horses are getting, how loud dogs are getting, and just they're at this point even demanding a different way of being with us. Right. And I fully think that it's, again, not that we have to do anything or that there is a specific way to do anything, but if I could, you know, invite everyone to take this, you know, to heal their animal human ancestry, I do.
Okay, let's take, there was one thing I wanted to inject in there, but it seems to have left my mind now. So one thing I do want to bring to light is some people may not know what we're talking about. So ancestral healing, say if we're talking about healing your say you have a horse, and maybe your horse, let's just pull something out. Maybe your horse is shut down, your horse is resistant, your horse is detached or angry or reactive. When we go back and look at how we often breed and we design animals to be for our own, usually visual, aesthetic, ego purposes, we have subjected the mother and the stallion to those demands. And so what happens in epigenetics, like trauma is carried in the eggs or it's carried in the sperm. So it's passed on. And like I said, this is actually, there's scientific evidence on that. I just read an article recently about the Civil War and epigenetics and the Civil War and what happened to, yeah. Well, the men that were in, especially in concentration camps, in the Confederate, the Union soldiers in concentration camps, they only had the space of a coffin. They were so overcrowded. Most of them died of scurvy or diarrhea. All they had to eat was corn. So a lot of those men had children before the war, and after the war, some of them that lived, they went on to have children again. Their children was much more susceptible to a shorter lifespan and to medical and trauma and stress-induced conditions. So it's passed on also through the men too, not just through the eggs. If a woman has been traumatized, and you know, the eggs are in an embryo, all the eggs you're ever going to have is in your embryo. It's in the fetus. And so they you know, from the very time that you were conceived, you've carried your mother's and your grandmother's trauma or their bliss or whatever. I wish we could say more of us carried bliss, but most of us seem to carry more trauma from that in some way. So the same way, if you apply that to your horses over generations, you know, I remember years ago, before I got my first horse, I was looking at, I like Arabians, and I went to this barn to look at an Arabian. And when I walked in this barn, there was a double stall with a horse in a black coat, a black neck thing, a black hood, and all four legs chained with chains about that long in the stall. And I just stopped and I said, what did he do? I mean, I thought he was awaiting execution. It's like,
Yeah.
what did he do? And oh, that's our show stallion. It was a gated barn. And, you know, I left there. I don't remember the horse even, but I left there traumatized. Well, what does that pass on? That's your show stallion. What does that horse pass on to the generations when he breeds the mare? And is the mare always forced to breed? What is her life like? All of these things carry down through our horses.
Mhm.
And, you know, the more I look into this, the more influence I believe that it has on the offspring of that. And then we just perpetuate it as we go on breeding and breeding and breeding. So I think it's our accountability and our moral or integral obligation to pay attention to these things when we breed. First of all, a lot of people stop breeding. And to be mindful of how the lives of the breeding animals are, so that there's less trauma that is passed on through our horses and through our dogs and all animals in general, but we're talking about domestic animals right now. So anyway, that's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about the ancestral healing that needs to happen and the epigenetics as to how it works.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any, okay, you just talked about your mare Ariel. What maybe is another example you can give of how your horses help you with ancestral healing, or you help them with ancestral healing? How does it show up, or how does it shift things between you?
Yeah. Dakota's a fun one because he's a Mustang. And he's got, you know, a lot more. He was born in the wild. And he's 5 years old. And our dynamic is, I mean, obviously different dynamics with all the animals and stuff, but he brings about this wild essence that the girls just don't quite have. And it is really beautiful ancestrally. Like, you know, when I go and then Dakota's like, hey, it's you and me time. We're going to engage in a little, you know, in our space. And he invites forward this more ancient, like this more ancient wild within me that, you know, my first, you know, 5 or 6 generations of ancestors, you know, they wouldn't bring that forward. But if I go back farther and farther and farther, you know, Viking ancestors, Scottish ancestors, Swedish ancestors, really deep shamanic ancestors as well, he brings them forward in a way where, again, we talked about that bliss of like, oh yeah, I wish we talked about or carried more bliss, but we kind of carry more trauma. He offers me an opportunity to bring forward a lot more of that bliss and a lot more of that kind of sacred gifts that our ancestors have passed on through generations. Go ahead.
So rather than his recent ancestry of the Mustang plight.
Yes. Yeah. He goes, hey, we're going to go back. We're going to go play. We're going to go deep, deep, deep back to a time and place where, you know, we all were wild.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And Edith, she's like, I just have tea with you. That's what we do. We just have tea. She's my Shetland pony, and she is just the sweetest. Okay. She's like, but Elsa, like, look at who else you've helped. A lot of my clients are horses. You know, a lot of the work that I do is with horses and their humans and to help them have greater relationships and things. And I would not be the, you know, quote unquote healer, the quote unquote, you know, coach, whatever you want to call it, that I am if I hadn't healed this. And I can say that with an absolute assuredness, because it was after that I healed mine and healed it and then began to embody it, asking different questions, kind of like Ariel said, walking up and asking, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Humans don't ask horses those things. That's how I started bringing that knowledge to all of my clients, asking my clients and their horses to take a step back, take a step back, think about the way you go throughout your day, and think how many decisions are made for you and or your horse that are based on, what's this animal going to do for me? What do I have to do for my horse today? How much money is my horse going to cost me today? What do I have to accomplish for this horse? What will my horse accomplish for me? And I didn't have a lot of that languaging beforehand. It was after that I, healed and embodied and began working really intimately with my ancestors and the ancestors of my horses, and just kind of animal, like the equine collective kind of became very prominent in my kind of field of support and spirit team and stuff. And yeah, a lot of that languaging and just not ease, but practices to offer to people and their horses made a lot of my client work a lot more easily understood and digestible for people to take little bits here and there home. Here, go practice this, go just sit and be, here's something you can do, or, oh, they're doing this, there's a reflection here. And a lot of that was already there, but again, I was able to go deeper.
Okay. Well, is there anything in particular you want to share about basically different modalities of your work, or any more ancestral healing or whatever, before we wind up?
As I mentioned, I do Akashic record work. That's kind of the overarching umbrella, and I guess boat, it would be more of a boat of my healing work that I do, offering it to both animals and their humans. Oh my goodness. I should have maybe made sure my animal communication frequencies were tuned a little differently today. I've got so many coming in, and my apologies. I'm sure you're used to this too as well, though, of like you're trying to speak and then something or someone comes in and it's like, excuse me, especially with the animals. A lot of Akashic record work, offering Akashic sessions to, for everything. I kind of, how like Oprah has her, like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car type thing. I'm like, one, everyone has Akashic records. Two, everyone can read Akashic records. And three, like, I always like to say too, like, if you're curious about something, like, go into your records. Like, there's a healing for that. There's a healing for that. There's something to learn in your records about that. Like, it's absolute infinite information, wisdom, awareness for people and their animals to go and experience together. And I think that along with the ancestral healing is so important, because you not only get, the awareness of the ancestors in this physical reality and realm, but then you also get to explore that soul history, which is just so beautiful to be a part of. And then you learn so much more about the richness that's available for the relationship between you and your horses, to flourish and thrive for both
Okay,
partners.
well, first tell people what Akashic records are. I'm a little bit familiar with them, but tell people what Akashic records are.
Yes, so the Akashic records can be described in a myriad of ways, but a really great way just to kind of dumb them down is like Google for your soul, Google for the cosmos, and so much, it's an energetic healing modality. So much like Reiki or any other energy work, it's accessing a higher vibrational frequency that allows you, the reader or the engager of the records, to channel higher consciousness information and answers, healing, et cetera, et cetera. And it is not just, like I said, it's whole soul history. So any past lives that you've lived as animals, as mythical creatures, et cetera, et cetera. And I've also done a lot of Akashic work with people who don't necessarily believe in past lives. You don't have to, because your Akashic records are only ever going to present you with what you're most available for. Much like Reiki, it gives you exactly what you need that day. The Akashic records will always give you what you need. Does that give a
Mhm.
little bit of a definition?
Yeah, because a lot of
Okay.
people go, what?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you tell people how they can get a hold of you? And also I will put her contact information in the notes on the YouTube video as well.
Yeah, so getting a hold of me is quite easy. Instagram is definitely the best place. And my Instagram handle is one word, all lowercase, wolf like the animal, underscore, winds like the breeze, WINDS. And then my website you can actually find through Instagram, but it is just www.wolfwinds.com.
Okay, perfect. All right, and I will include that below. So thank you so much for joining. And I highly encourage people to go ahead, well, Elsa's website, and she offers some different things that's a little more out of the box. And also I do encourage people to kind of open their minds a little bit to ancestral healing and epigenetics. I use epigenetics because there is science behind it. And just kind of explore that path for yourself and your animals, and just see where it leads you. So I'm Delea. If you'd like more about my work, I'm truenorthequestrians.com. That will also be included. And thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep the faith and keep up with your horses.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Yes.